What are some of the biggest risks of rushing through the pre-construction phase?
Ultimately, project failure, project overruns, zero cost controls, project team members unaligned with stakeholders, just not really understanding the project goals or the objectives.
Mhm. How is it important to the client? So if I have a design that's done, ready to go, I obviously want to start it yesterday. So why is it important for me to understand the pre-construction phase?
Yeah,
Okay.
got to do with an internal quality management system, which we stand behind, which is how we guarantee our product and our client experience. We speak about things like quality assurance, which is process focused and really understanding our processes and making sure the client is adding value. We're understanding the handovers from sales, estimation, design, what the design ultimately is trying to achieve, and making sure all of that is packaged and handed over to construction team. So there's so much back end work that needs to happen before there's any sort of boots on the ground. And typically, there's no sweet spot for what's the best timeline for pre-construction. Again, it depends on the scale of the project, the complexity of the project. Is it in permitting? Is it not? What city it's in? With the quality management system, again, it's quality assurance, again, which was process orientated. Quality control, which is throughout the process of construction, checking in just to ensure that our installations are up to our high-end standards, industry standards, and making sure that the client has that experience. We have certain touch points every day and every week with the client to keep them informed, and to make sure that ultimately we're achieving, again, as I said, the major project objectives along with the design and budget.
Mhm. And those touch points are still there in the pre-construction phase?
Yeah, for sure. We'll have internal checkpoints again once contract is signed. We're in project initiation. Our process then will take us through refining if there's any changes before contract signing as regards to aligning budget. It goes back to the design team would make the changes, reflect to the new project scope, and make sure that the package is ready, 2D drawings, elevation plan, grading plan, the whole thing.
Mhm.
The drawings are set up for the team internally to make sure that we're all informed and we know, again, what the objective is. So that's initiation. And then when we come to pre-construction, all that back end work already is circulated to the construction team prior to an internal project handover, we'll call it, where it's fully handed over to construction to say, okay, here's the project confines. Here's what we need to achieve. Here's the design budget. Over to you guys. Let's go on. We start planning from there. So we'll have an internal meeting, go through everything. The team then will have an on-site meeting. And then after that, we'll construct a game plan, a strategy, what contractors we're using, what vendors we're using. So then that stuff goes out to tender. We'll tender the subs to our vendors for the materials. Again, sometimes the materials are special order. So again, yes, depending on the scale of the project, the more time for pre-construction, the better. So the team are more aligned. And we just have a strategy to understand what we're building, build a baseline schedule, and we'll put it into our production. Then we look at our seasonal ops and look at our production calendar or schedule and fit it in there and just keep track of it.
Mhm. You mentioned that some of the materials have to be like custom order, special
Mhm.
order.
Yeah.
How does this pre-construction phase help with saving time, like down the road and making sure that the project stays on track, on time that
Yeah.
way?
So typically, once we bring the contract signing into project initiation, one of the steps in our process, again, with our quality management system and quality assurance, is we would bring material samples to the client's house. You want to use contrast sometimes. So you want multiple colors and you put the pavers up against the house to make sure it matches the lighting. So like our design team would go and offer that service with the client and kind of make sure that we're all aligned and give them time to make their selection. And it might take a couple of days to make some decisions. Basically from there, then we would order stuff that's especially in special order, and try to get ahead of it that way.
Mhm. And during this process, how do you make sure that there's always this smooth communication? Because the designer will have certain things in mind that they talked about with client? And then how does that translate over to the construction team?
Yeah. So throughout our process, we have specific people designated for specific areas of the process. Not until, so when it's still in design upon contract signing, the designers are still heavily involved in the communications aspect, especially with all the materials and getting packaged ready for the construction team. It's not until really the pre-construction where the construction team is introduced to the client, and the designers will be heavily involved in introducing the construction team and trying to get the point across of the ultimate vision of the design again, because there might have been certain iterations and we just all got to be on the same page so that construction team is not bringing ideas to the client that were already spoken about.
Mhm.
Design phase. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. So just making sure that everybody takes full ownership of their portion of the process and having super clarity on that.
Mhm.
Mm.
So during this process, what are some common issues that you find come up and how do you mitigate them?
Yeah, as I said, like I mentioned potential double work as regards to if we're not communicating all of the ideas that potentially came up in the design or the estimating phase with the construction team are trying to add value on the ground. Or what about this? Or what about that? Sometimes it might frustrate the client. We've already been through this with the design team.
Mhm.
Making sure that we're all aware and we're all speaking the same language, I think is super important. And it shows huge alignment throughout the company process, throughout the departments, especially when there's so many different people involved and departments. Once we sell the design to completing the product, right? There's a lot of people involved.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And do you ever find that during this stage, clients try to make revisions?
Yes. All the
Nice.
time. And it's natural. It's okay. So what I would say is the more revisions potentially that we're having to do on the design, the slower the pre-construction and the knock-on effect is solidifying your date to be in the construction schedule, if that almost makes sense. Or what about this or what about that? Sometimes it's very organic throughout the build once you have a clean slate and you start seeing stuff come together, then we might have some inspiration there and then. Ultimately, I would focus on everyone's done their diligence in the design process. Let's keep doing our diligence again in pre-construction and potentially getting through that. And let's again get into construction and let's see what happens at a clean slate.
Mhm.
Um, we wouldn't just rush through the design for the sake of it. As I said, we have specific touch points daily with the clients on site. We're on site foreman. And then weekly, we'll have a weekly project report with the clients weekly coming from our construction manager. So
Mhm.
there's always that touch point for communication and alignment. Super important.
Mhm. Yeah, of course. Communication is always the best.
Mm.
Is there any part of or any procedure that you have put in place that you would know make sure that the process is as smooth as possible?
That's the ultimate goal. We're constantly evolving our processes. We'll say there's no, for me, I wish we could click a button and it would have a perfect process, but these things are live. They move as long as we're still following the same processes and also reviewing and getting feedback from the team, getting feedback from the clients, understanding how it felt for them to come through our process is super important. And then we make revisions. Some steps might need to be taken out of the process, for example.
Mhm.
Steps might need to be added. I think it's super important to always keep your finger on the pulse there when it comes to processes.
And what advice could you give to other business owners who want to implement this sort of a process?
It's worth the time, front end time to really refine and define your processes. It's super important, especially for people to have transparency and clarity in their role, owning their lane, understanding what they need to do. Even if you're a small team, it's super important to hold accountability. And ultimately, processes are there to deliver on your word. We we sell designs. And we also deliver the product. So our processes are there to help guide us. Processes, we've delivered hundreds of high-end design and build projects throughout the lower mainland, proven processes, and they're customized to our business. Everybody's got their own process, and there's huge value in that.
Yeah, there definitely is. And what advice would you give to the team about sticking to these processes to make it through the pre-construction phase?
I would say own your lane, trust the process, follow it through. If everybody does their part of the process, I know it works. It's trusted. You got to believe in it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the bigger picture. It's like why is to deliver super high end product with an amazing customer experience. That's our why, and our processes get us there. We can have all the A players in the world we want, but if we don't have a super refined process, we're just going to burn each other out. I've been there. I've lived through it. We've started, yeah, with some sort of process, but as I said, they're iterative. Every single year, you got to refine and update or cut or add to your process to make sure that you're adding the ultimate value to your client and also our team, right? We don't want anyone to get burned out.